Hey everybody, David Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of the Growing Firm podcast. Today's guest is Greg O'Brien. Now, the interesting thing about Greg is, and this is the cool thing about our community, by the way, is he shot me an email like a month or two ago, and he said that he's been listening to the podcast, he's been using Jetpack Workflow since day one, and he said that he's been able to grow from essentially just himself to now a team of seven, uh, clients in four different states, 100% virtual. They're on track to have a $1 million run rate, and they've been in business for 24 months. So this is a perfect area for us to figure out, what is Greg doing? What lessons has he learned that maybe he wouldn't repeat, and what are some things that he would double down on, during this journey and in the next stage going into 2021. So really excited to have Greg on the show. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm excited to explore the story with you.
Thanks for having me, David. It's good to be here. I'm a big listener, as you said, and a fan, so it's cool to be on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really quick, just to set the baseline, we said that you had seven, team of seven. Talk us a little bit about the firm. Who do you serve? What do you offer them? What does that look like?
Yeah, so my firm, we consider ourselves a forward-thinking tax planning and virtual accounting, virtual CFO firm. We're headquartered in Boston, Mass, but our employees are completely virtual and remote. So of those seven people, I'm the only one actually physically in Boston. So everyone else is spread out throughout the country. Let's see. So we have Utah, Indiana, Texas, two in Pennsylvania, one in Arkansas. So continues to grow. Trying to grow it that way through the virtual model. So pre-COVID, I was a big believer in the virtual model, kind of studying some other virtual firms out there. New concept, but kind of adopted it from day one. And obviously, there's pros and cons to it. There's hurdles, but in the end, I've really enjoyed doing things virtually, and we'll continue to do it that way. And if the right person comes along that happens to be in Boston, we'll hire him. But for now, we're kind of looking for talent anywhere.
And your clientele, do you niche down? Is it in the Boston
hmm
area? What do you provide to them? How do you price it? What does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So when we first started, my kind of thesis was to serve startups in and around the Boston area. So in Boston, there's a lot of the Harvard, MIT tech clients, pharmaceutical clients, science-based clients. So that's where the ideas started. So we initially niched down to that, and then we've kind of morphed over the last couple of years into really the way I look at it is tech forward clients. So they don't have to be in the tech industry, but people that are using technology to run their business, whether that's a digital marketing company or it's a pure tech client. So anyone that's kind of new age business model, we're looking to work with them. Now, as far as services, so that's another thing. Over time, we've really narrowed that down as well. So two big things we're providing is one, tax planning and compliance services for those clients, and then two, virtual accounting or virtual CFO services, depending on how large they are and their needs. And as far as billing, so all of this is done on a value billing system. So again, that's something we started from day one. So I didn't have to eliminate or change any habits of hourly billing. So we started with that kind of concept at first, and it's obviously evolved over time. But our clients come in, there's generally an onboarding fee for tax planning just to get them set up and onto our systems and put really a forward-thinking plan in place. And then two, they go onto our monthly packages, in which we offer a couple different packages to them, but they are truly value priced to that client depending on what they need and the engagement that it's going to be necessary on our side.
Got it. What do you think is the average? What's the average client pay you a month?
Good question. So over time, I think probably everyone's learned this lesson, but when you first start, someone that says they're going to pay you a monthly fee looks pretty good, no matter what that is. And then as you get larger, you have to change that. So I think right now our average monthly fee is somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 a month. It's been creeping up that way,
Yeah.
and it's been difficult to turn some of the the $500 to $700 a month clients down, because there's definitely a good place for them. But as we've kind of expanded and got more busy, we've had to be a little more narrowly focused onto certain clients that we want to work with, and we can offer some of these more forward thinking kind of CFO services as well. So it varies, but we're trying to push that average up as we grow.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, and I mean, there's so much we could dig into. I mean, but at a high level, a lot of growth, 2 years. Couple things come to mind. The first one is how are you getting these clients? I mean, this is pretty
Yeah.
amazing growth, right?
Yeah, good question. So when I first started, like, my journey, I originally kind of thought the way to enter the industry was through acquisition. So I looked at a couple firms and, retiring practitioners locally, and I just wasn't, I don't know, it didn't click for me. I didn't understand their model and why things were like they were. There's very low profitability. So a couple advisors in my life said, "Hey, don't do that. You can just do it yourself." So I really started from day one on cold outreach. To I would look for, in these, tech magazines around here. Hey, a new startup formed, right? I would just, internet sleuth, figure out their owner's email address, send them an email saying, "Hey, do you need help with your first C corp tax return?" Something simple like that. And amazingly, a lot of them said, "Yeah." Like they were kind of like, "How do you even know about us?" So and to this day, those three first clients I got, they're still clients. They just started with a cold outreach. Now they're pretty good monthly clients we have. So that's how it started. Obviously, it's morphed, but there's been obviously the internal growth that's come just through word of mouth and referrals. And as things have grown, it's been nice because we've picked up some relationships on the West Coast, so we've developed a nice little niche out in Southern California, and then clients more locally have spun off. Now, the second kind of way we've really grown is through online, through SEO and Google advertising. So I do believe it does work. You have to invest in it, but the more you grow that online presence through blogging, through having a robust website, and having paying someone to do SEO if you don't know how to do it, I truly think that does work, and it does lead to a lot of inbound leads. And when we look back and track where does client X come from, I'm amazed sometimes that they're at this point only 2 years in, they may be a second or third generation client. From client one has led to two, three, four clients, right? And they may have come in off of a cold internet lead. So definitely trying to keep the online presence growing.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting, right? You go to your website and we'll link it up, gregobriencpa.com. It looks like you're optimizing for Boston, Mass, accounting and tax services, but I mean, I'm assuming if I click around to CFO services, it looks like every sub page in your website is really trying to be optimized for a certain keyword locally or in the industry. And so let me ask you this, because I mean I think there's a lot of great things going with your website. What was the financial commitment you made to either setting up this website and or what do you spend a month on SEO slash AdWords?
Yeah, it's a good question. So from day one, I knew that website was going to be important. Just from my industry research, a lot of prospects and people would tell me, almost every CPA out there has a lousy website. And, I'd look around, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of websites that are old, or lacking. So I saw that as an opportunity. So I came across a company called ClientWise, and they're the ones who developed my website. They did a great job. Um, I had a lot of custom control of it. So, I wanted to look and feel a certain way. We're working with a lot of younger business owners and millennial age business owners. So I wanted to have kind of a new age vibe to it as well, and a kind of a tech vibe to it. So they were great with that custom control. Now, as things grew, I've grown with them as well. So I pay them for SEO, and it's probably around $200 a month to optimize the keywords on the website. Like you said, sometimes you look and there's these random words on pages, but they're doing that, right, to grow this SEO presence, which I'm certainly not an expert in, but I understand why they're doing it. And then second, so Google AdWords, probably spend about $1,000 a month on that. And what I've learned from that is that if you crank the dial up, you certainly will get more leads. The difficult part is making sure that your ads are niched down enough so that you're not getting unqualified leads. For example, we're not really trying to attract just 1040 preparation clients. If the ads aren't structured properly, I don't want someone to type in personal tax return and then my ad to show up right away, because then it'll just be an unqualified lead. So definitely learning more about that has been key. But I do think that, if those two things are integrated properly, it can really grow your online presence.
Yeah. And how far was your business along? So you started with cold outreach. Which is so amazing, by the way. You just like, don't
Mhm.
overcomplicate it. You pick a market and then just work your butt off, right?
And yeah, and
The-
by the way, I was operating under a Gmail account, no like business even registered yet. It was just pure side hustles, like let's test the market type of thing. So you'd be amazed, a 20, 25-year-old business owners, they need somebody too, right? And they're not necessarily their first tax return's not top of mind. And
yeah.
just found an opportunity to get in front of them.
And at what stage was the business at, like revenue wise, when you said, okay, I'm going to start investing like $1,000 a month, or I want to go deeper into the website? Was that in the first year, first half of a year, or was it after year one where you got some revenue? You said, okay, let's pour it back into marketing.
Probably the first half of the first year, actually, because I think I saw right away the opportunity, and I remember specifically a client. So I was running the business at first using just my cell phone number. I remember one day a client came in through text message, and he texted me saying, "Hey, I have this online startup. I like your website and all this stuff." And we hit it off. He actually was local. We met, and he's about 25-year-old kid. But I was just shocked. I'm like, wow, this person just found me on the internet, sent me a text message, and then became a very valuable client to me. And he's now led to several other clients. And that was probably in month 3 or 4. And I just kind of at that point really started researching more and learning more about SEO, learning more about AdWords and growing the online presence. And from there, I just said, hey, you know what? I stopped looking at that as an expense and I started looking at it as an investment. So if I can
Mm.
spend $1,000 a month, but I'm getting several $1,000s back, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, if you get like one client from that,
One
actually,
client with a,
one client
at
a
least a,
quarter,
a
one client a
quarter,
quarter from that.
right? Because an average client, if we have them on a subscription model, they should be staying at least 5 years, I would think. I haven't gotten that far, but 5+ years. So yeah, I mean, it's worth that investment if you're confident you're going to be able to retain a client for that long.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side, so you're getting all these deals, you're getting all these leads, you're getting new clients coming on board, things are going well. You want to run a virtual firm. How did you start sourcing talent? How did you start sourcing the team? What are some good techniques you found to attract high quality candidates? Whether that's great job boards you found, or pockets, or just ways to structure the job description where you get good candidates.
Yeah. So I think in probably the middle of my first year, I had enough going on where I said, you know what, I can't really do much of this myself anymore. I had one kind of part-time bookkeeper, but he was definitely not someone that wanted to be full-time. So started really just kind of like you said, looking on the internet, on Indeed and different job boards, and came across somebody that actually owned his own bookkeeping firm at the time in Pennsylvania. And just started, giving him some contract work, taking on more work, and we just really became good friends and good partners through that kind of test work. And then eventually convinced him, probably at the end of year one, maybe a little over a year in, to come on as my first full-time employee. That's certainly it's certainly a big leap of faith from the business owner's perspective, right? Going from having a job to starting your own business to within a year, like now hiring someone else and providing for their family, providing for their livelihood. So it's certainly a stressful period to think about, but I just kind of took that leap of faith and I knew the value he would bring. And I knew that first employee would really let me let go a little bit, take one little baby step back and start focusing more on growth. So I think employee number one is a tough decision to make for people, but it was probably the best decision I've made so far. If I delayed any longer, I'd be further behind than I am now. So
Mhm.
making that leap of faith was really important.
So what I'm hearing is you got to test the waters by you found this individual as a contractor,
Hmm.
and then it started working out so well. You proposed the full time gig. They came on board. They're from Pennsylvania, which is obviously a state where awesome people come from.
Yep.
Right. So just but the how'd you get second, third, fourth, fifth? Um, after that, were they all contract that led to full time, or was there any pure like we need to hire somebody full time next week?
Yeah, so that's something I'll admit I was not prepared for. So I think that at that stage it was kind of one step at a time. So I had employee one. I said that'll probably last another year. I said we'll probably have just another employee, just one person for the year. And at that time I was really focused on, we have to. I knew from listening to podcasts, to researching, from everything, that we need to have systems in place. So I had been using Jetpack actually since when I was a solopreneur, right? It's a little different using it by yourself versus now looping someone else in. So I kind of turned the reins of that over to him to allow myself to go sell more. Now, the
To your
lesson
first hire, to your
my
first
first
timer.
hire, yep.
Got it.
So he now is our, our wizard of it. So I learned that, okay, I can let go of this and go sell. But the lesson I really did learn was I was not prepared for how fast the growth was going to happen and how quickly that first employee could come to capacity. So because I was just kind of testing the waters, and then probably about 3 months of his after he was in full time, he kind of came to me and said, "Hey, look, I'm up to my eyes right now. Like we need to look for somebody else." But by the time that someone says that to you, it's pretty late, right? Because then you're talking about 4 to 6 weeks to hire somebody, them to give notice, and whatnot. So employee number two is certainly a scramble, and that was sourced, I believe through Indeed, and then employee two referred to employee three. They knew each other from high school, which was convenient, and it went from there. But the big lesson definitely was capacity and pre-hiring, right? And kind of looking at hiring as an investment, having confidence to hire versus waiting till someone is too busy, because no one wants to live like that, or no employee wants to kind of be kind of live their life like that either. So that was a good learning lesson, just kind of realizing that you got to plan ahead, and realize that you can't wait till someone's up to their eyeballs to start looking for the next hire. You got to kind of always be looking to hire.
Yeah, and what is that calculation for you? Is it something between you look at the sales pipeline, you look at what could potentially be coming in, and then is there a certain capacity? It could be hard, or it could just be more of a feeling. But it's like when your team hits on average 80% capacity and you have a healthy pipeline, do you start looking, or is it 50%? Is it 90%? Like, how do you think about that?
I 75%. And the difficult part is, and we've been working on this for a while now, trying to solidify it. Because in my head, what I'd really like to know is, so each of our accountants, we call them project managers. So how many clients can each project manager handle? Now, for the work we do, we think it's somewhere between 15 and 20. Um, the issue is not every client's the same, right? So we've come up with kind of a grading system. We call them A clients, B clients, C clients, and that may have to do with what agreement they're on, and also have to do with the industry they're in, how much work's involved. There might be a small business that has 5,000 transactions a month that's different than a large business with 5 transactions. So we try to grade them out there and then balance the workload between people. Um, but yes, so we have a pipeline. So every Monday when we're talking, we look at the pipeline together, and say, okay, does project manager X or Y have capacity? Yes or no? And once I see that capacity, getting to, hey, they can only take on maybe 2 more clients, that's when I have to start looking for the next person, or maybe regenerating the conversations with some other candidates in the past that were finalists. So definitely trying to be more forward thinking with the hiring right now.
Yeah. Well, are you so do you use the point systems as a proxy for capacity, or do you track like budgeted time
Good
in like
question.
Jetpack?
So we don't really track time at all. There's occasionally certain projects that I ask people to track time on, just for more my understanding, but since we're not really billing time, we're not tracking that. So we're using this point system,
Mhm.
um, in where, at least, for example, without kind of going really into the weeds on it, just say an A client is worth 2, a B client's worth 1, a C client's worth 0.5, right? So that's how we try to add it up. So obviously, we don't want one project manager having 7 A's, and then and then all B's, right? And then the other person gets all the C's. We try to have that balance. So when I look at the pipeline, with our accounting director, I'll say, and our tax director too, I'll say, hey, look, this is what we think's involved based on reviewing their stuff. Like, who has capacity for this? And and then the time comes to say, no one has the ability to take on another A client, right? So even though we may not have a quote unquote full-time job ready yet, it's time to hire, because we know that work's going to come, whether it's 1 month or 2 months. We know the pipeline's filled, and that work's going to come in a matter of time.
Yeah. You unpack this Monday meeting for me a little bit. So is that with everybody, or is it just with you and the directors?
Yeah, so this is actually something, I think we probably took it from your podcast, actually, from from Summit CPA, who we've been kind
Oh,
of
cool.
working with as well on the
Yeah.
learning side of things. So they talked about their Monday Jetpack meetings, and that was something that obviously, as the owner would bother me, right? If I see things that are overdue and like, what's going on? Why is this overdue? Like, because I'm not in those details. So that meeting's evolved over time, but what we've done now is just like Summit does is we'll go into the Monday meeting. So that's with everybody. And we'll go person by person, right? As tedious it may be, it's worth it. We'll go through the overdue project list for them and just say, hey, what's the status update here? It may be that the client's late. It may be that we're late, but whatever it is, we'll find a realistic date to move it out to. And then if they need my involvement with, client relations or anything else, we talk about it then. But we do walk away from that meeting with a clean jetpack every Monday morning with updated dates, realistic dates that we can stick to. And that's also a metric for us too. We're deadline driven, so we're tracking deadlines that our project managers are hitting or missing, right? That all goes into the compensation model. So that's important, for them, right? So they're trying to be realistic with those dates as well. But that's been a really, really big thing for us, is having those Monday meetings. So myself as the owner has the view of like what's going on here, and I don't have to worry about things that are overdue because I know that someone's dealing with it. And then our director level people, they know exactly what the team's gonna be working on for the week ahead.
Yeah. Fascinating. So, I mean, two things. One is good news. By the time this episode will come out, I think there's going to be a pretty cool update that you're going to like, where you could pull by team member or client the amount of work that's getting done on time, both at
Mm.
the job level and the task level, uh, which hopefully will help streamline some of those answers. But the other question I have for you is, um, walk me through this compensation model. I think that's really cool. I don't know if we've really unpacked anything like this before.
Yeah, so specifically with our project managers, who you'd consider like a senior accountant in a traditional role. So what we've tried to do there, and it's been an evolving model over time, but put what we call like KPIs together for them. So um, they may involve things like, we'll say, hey, A clients need to have their monthly financials out by the 12th, B clients by the 15th, and then C clients say by the 20th, right? So um, we aim to hit about 85, 90% of those each month on time if it's controllable. Obviously, if the client is an issue with them, they're not getting us stuff, that's no harm, no foul. So that's one thing. We also will look at from a technical standpoint. So when our directors are doing kind of the technical review of the work, um, you know, if there's significant mistakes, that goes into our KPIs. And then we also do um, pretty much every Monday, we'll have calls with one or two clients randomly. We call them client care calls, in which the director will or myself will call a client to say, "Hey, how's it going? Everything going good? Are you working well with the team? Do you have any issues? Are there any response issues? Things like that." So we can get kind of honest feedback, right, from a client, to make sure everything's going okay. And 9 times out of 10, it is. But if they say, "Oh, hey, there's this email we've sent a couple times they haven't responded to," that's something that we would leave feedback on um, our KPI form for an accountant. So we try to think about it that way, since we're not times on a driver to us, deliverables are a driver. So ideally, if someone gets the work done on time, high quality, and is giving good customer service, they're gonna, without overthinking it, they're gonna hit all their KPIs.
Yeah, and so the getting your jobs done on time, 85, 90, 95%. The review, um what's the target for those reviews? Like, to say, like, okay, easy mistake, or whatever, not a big deal, versus this is an egregious mistake, and this would, so how do you draw those lines, and
So that
or targets for that?
it's more about not making the same mistake, right? So obviously we all make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. So let's just say the payroll journal entries messed up on a client, right? That will be noted, and then the next month when it rolls forward, if they make that same mistake again, right, that's more of a problem. That's where that would go on the KPI sheet. So we try to look at, is the person self-correcting? Are they learning from their mistakes? And since we've been doing it, the answer is pretty much always yes. But it's a good way for feedback to the staff member that, hey, this is what we found. And then they know, oh, hey, I got to make sure, next month I catch this. So it's a good way for them to learn as well.
Got it. Got it. So, so as long as it's as long as they're self-correcting, it's not entirely egregious, and it's not. y- I guess in theory, the quantity of mistakes will be decreasing month over month. Like there shouldn't be a lot of net new mistakes at some point. Like the
Of
reviews.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the review should be catching that. And the other thing we do with that too. So let's just say that a client has a weird thing. Oh, hey, the director may catch it. Hey, you didn't realize this did this weird equity entry that had to be made. Like we got to make sure we catch that. We'll actually add that to their kind of their task list on their Jetpack job as well. So
Yeah.
that's been really important. That Ben, our accounting director, has been building out by client. It's a huge investment of time and energy, but it's very worth it to have like a detailed process guide. We do it in Jetpack for each client that, it might have 25 or 30 steps with these nuanced things, but someone has to check it off, right? So if they checked it off and they said they did it and it's still wrong, that's a feedback that we're getting. But if it's in Jetpack, 95% they're gonna get it right and they're gonna know it. And then two is that if for example the project manager is out sick or on vacation and another one's filling in for them, they have a good guide. Hey, this is 25 steps that I hope a very good accountant could step into and get it pretty much right. Obviously, there might be some help needed, but without that, I think we would struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. Two final questions. Um, the first one is what's really impressive about your journey. I mean, there's many things, but over 2 years, you've been able to really, I think, iterate very quickly and learn very, very quickly. And so, I guess my question is, how do you do that? I think some of the decisions you've made and some of the progress you made over the 2 years might take somebody else 5 years or 10 years. Heck, might even take them 20 years. So, I'm just curious how you approach what has allowed you to approach your firm in that way to be so iterative and growth minded.
Yeah, so big believer in kind of like in self-education and self-growth. So a few things that I've kind of invested in as a firm. So we're members of CTC, so Certified Tax Coaches. That was a mindset change right from the beginning, right? I think I started that in the second month. Big commitment at the time, got an ROI within weeks.
What's the
Um,
cost? What's the cost commitment? I mean, maybe it's changed,
eh,
but like
it's
roughly speaking.
probably about $5,000.
Yeah, so month two is huge.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then I remember they're saying, "Hey, do you?" I remember them telling you you'll get an ROI on this. You're just skeptical, right? Like you're brand new, but I talked to one of my kind of mentors, and they said if there's an ROI, go do it, right? And stop thinking of it as an expense. It's an investment. So I've always kind of had that mindset of investing in yourself. And since then, I mean, I'm always in something. I mean, um, Jackie Meyer and Chuck Bauer who've had on the podcast, I believe.
Hmm.
I've done their group coaching program. I do one-on-one coaching, sales coaching with Chuck, kind of throughout the year. I'm in the mastermind with Summit. So always investing myself. And if it's not something like that, then it's reading business books, podcasts, pretty much any and every accounting podcast or firm podcast out there. I'm listening to it. I think that you just start taking bits and pieces from everybody that you listen to, and you start crafting it in your own manner. So I think the one thing I'm glad I didn't fall into is just getting in the trap of just being like any other accounting firm, right? I kind of said let's do it differently. Let's learn from others. There are other people out there doing forward thinking stuff. Let's just start absorbing as much content as I possibly can and testing the waters with it. So really just being a student, finding mentors, hiring coaches, listening, and absorbing as much as you can has probably been my biggest key. To get there, right? You got to love it. You got to invest in yourself, and you got to kind of eat, sleep, and breathe it. But that's what I found has really worked best for us.
Yeah, and I guess my second question then is like, what would be kind of a crash course? Somebody's listening right now, and they're like, wow, Greg really accelerated his firm very quickly. He's grabbing all these great resources. If somebody wants to start getting a crash course on forward thinking firms, what books, podcasts, mentors? I mean, you mentioned Summit CPA. We're customers of ours. We're huge fans of them. We'll link them up as well. But like, who comes to mind, or what resources come to mind? Websites, books, podcasts, anything, like just whatever you want to throw out there. We'll link up in the show notes.
Yeah, so certainly this podcast. So like I said, this podcast, I'm growing my accounting practice podcast. No joke, probably listen to every single one of them back to the beginning, right? They're all have different content. Because one thing I didn't really, when you get into business, I'm thinking I'm going into business to be a CPA. I didn't necessarily think I'm going into business to be the chief marketing officer, chief sales officer, all these different things, HR now. So there's a lot to learn, right? So I'm looking at overall business learning, studying business models. So I think that people that want to do this type of model, they should really absorb a lot about value pricing, about subscription models, platform models like Uber, Facebook, those kind of business models, because um, I just think that you don't have to do it the exact same ways that's always been done. So absorbing that content, and if it's specific to the accounting industry, great. But if not, I think absorbing business knowledge is so important, because there's so much to learn, and I probably know 1% at this point, right? There's just so much out there to learn to get to that next level. But I don't think in this day and age we need to recreate the wheel, right? Because there's so much free content out there that you can absorb. And I just think that picking one place and starting, whether it's going back to the beginning of this podcast or another accounting podcast, and just going episode by episode, right? Or looking at the titles that really interest you. I just think certain things will click in your mind about how you do or you do not want to do things.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So we'll link up those podcasts. I'm big fans of Mike and Ron at the Growing My Accounting Practice. Um, I was on it one time, and they're such characters. The
Mhm.
research of what they do is so unique. So it's a really fun podcast. We'll link up Jackie. We'll link up Chuck. We'll link up Summit CPA. We'll link up to the tax coaching program you had mentioned. Are there any books or blogs that come to mind, or associations that come to mind? Is there anything else you would want to link up on the show,
Yeah, I
even
mean,
even from this year? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just as far as education, I'm a big reader of Accounting Today, CPA Practice Advisor, as far as like mindset books go, like my probably favorite book out there is Rich Dad Poor Dad, because I think a lot of my clients have that same mindset as well. So nothing, that they actually do talk about some accounting principles in there, but that's just more of an overall growth mindset, and that goes back to the thinking about investing versus expense, right? So I look at business. If I'm going to spend something in my business, right? Am I getting an ROI? And then am I passing an ROI into our clients? So that book really helped kind of frame my mindset of how I want to run a business.
Yeah, 100%. It's so funny you bring up books. I mean, I did the mental calculation the other day, if you're a firm owner or you're a business owner, and you can get one impactful idea out of one book a year,
Mm.
it will more than pay for itself, because like a 10% lift to your business, what are we talking about? Like 100 grand.
Hmm.
And you're not going to spend 100 grand on, books in a year. I mean, you could, but so it's almost like if you're a business owner and you're actually reading these things and trying to instill the best practices back into your business, it's almost impossible to spend too much money on books. That's my justification for buying a bunch of stuff on Amazon. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just me, but it's like you buy 5 or 6 books a month. Maybe you can only crank out one or two or three or four of them. But if you catch one great idea, you can install in your business for marketing, sales, fulfillment, workflow, whatever. I mean, these things are going to pay 10 times over.
I think the hardest challenge too is there's so much content out there. Um, One thing I do is, I'll listen to something and I'll get all these ideas. I got to write it down. I got to send myself an email or take notes on my iPhone if I'm walking around with it. Because things just pop in your mind. You're listening to stuff and it really helps you be creative. Then it's really, okay, can we actually do this? Can we apply it? And is it going to be, what is the deadline? Are we going to do this immediately? Is it going to take us a year? Is this a 5-year goal? So certainly there's so much content out there. Then it's really about putting it into action and finding a plan how to get it into action. And I think it's one of those quotes that over the short term you feel like you got nothing done, but if you look back, month, year, a couple years, you got a lot more done than you expected. And I think a lot of that goes to the content you're absorbing.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Greg, this has been a real treat. I appreciate you reaching out. If somebody wants to connect with you, learn more about your story, visit your website, what's the best way for them to connect with you and say thanks for coming on the show?
Yeah, certainly. They can certainly send me an email. It's Greg at gregobriencpa.com. The website's gotaxplanning.com, or I'm on LinkedIn as well. If you can sort through the other O'Briens, I'm there somewhere.
Awesome. We'll link up everything in the show notes at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll link up all the sources, books, podcasts, resources, membership sites, past interviews that Greg mentioned. And if you're somebody like Greg, you've been using Jetpack Workflow, you've been following the podcast, you feel like you have an amazing story to share, email me, david@jetpackworkflow.com. Always excited to bring people that are in the trenches, really building the firm. We love interviews like this. You get so much energy out of them. So if you have one story that's similar to Greg, email me, come on the show, whether you're just getting started, you're halfway through your journey, or you're towards the end, you just sold your firm, you want to talk about it, let me know. Shoot me an email. And Greg, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, David.